To California Traditions at the Crane House at San Juan Bautista, and today we're here with Pete and his daughters, and we're doing a little discussion on California non-firearm weapons, and because the Californios were kind of short on firearms and they weren't that available, so they used other items for use of weapons and quite effectively, and that way made up for their inability to obtain and maintain firearms.
John, thanks for seeing me.
Thanks for coming. And
so you live, how old is your house? 1823? 1833?
no, it's not quite that old. 1834.
Okay, 1834. So that house was here. This house, right where we're standing, was here as a house during the year 1845, which is when I'm doing my snapshot.
Okay.
And what I'm trying to do in this video is discuss the weapons of the Californios right before the gringos arrived, right before everything started to change, right before the Bear Flag Revolt, which was June of 1846. So there's 8,000 Californios. They're European Hispanics, and they are here, and the missions have ended. And they're doing ranchos, giant hide and tallow trade. They aren't shipping meat, they're shipping the hides and the tallow of cattle. So these are horse people, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. They're very much a horse-oriented culture. It's kind of been said they couldn't do anything unless it was off the back of a horse.
Right.
And because they were, they're from the Spanish culture, descended from the Spanish culture, and then in Spain, much of Spain was very much a horse culture as well.
Okay.
Mainly because they had a type of environment that's very similar to the environment of the New World, and that's like large open range expanses, where the most efficient way of utilizing that type of environment is with grazing animals. And
okay.
so long before the New World was discovered by the Europeans, the Spanish vaqueros were wandering around Spain with herds of cattle.
So vaquero is somebody who chases a vaca. So
Right.
It's a cowboy, literally a cow chaser,
Right. Yeah. The vaquero is an occupation.
not a racial connotation. So
No.
you could have Native Americans, you could have gringos from the States who came here on the ships. Anybody who's chasing cattle who does that as a career is a vaquero.
Absolutely.
And that's where we get buckaroo.
Right.
So these are the ancestors of our modern cowboy.
Exactly.
Wow. So I'm doing my studies about guns, and there's guns coming in from all over, but not very many. There's very few guns. The vaqueros and the Californios have very few guns because this is on the other side of the world from manufacturing places. One of the things that gets me is they used other things as weapons, agricultural tools, very effectively. And one of the first things is this thing. So what's that?
Yeah. This is la riata.
The lariat.
The lariat.
Yeah.
Yeah. For those people who mutilate the Spanish language and call it lariat, it's properly pronounced. It's la riata.
Okay.
And also it could be called el lazo, which is where the word lasso comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And this is primarily a livestock handling tool, and then
Used to catch cows, basically.
right to catch cattle or to catch a horse, to get your horse and go out to catch cows, because you have to have your horse to help you go out and catch the cows.
This is made of rawhide,
Right.
literally rawhide.
Yeah. Literally, the rawhide is the raw hide, which means it's not tanned.
It's not tan, it's just raw skin
Right.
off of a cow or a steer
With the hair removed.
with the hair removed.
And that has that gives you the qualities you need for the riata to be able to use it the way you'd use it to catch animals, and because the untanned hide, it's a little bit stiffer, and so that would enable you to form a loop that would stay open. A soft rope would be just kind of like a piece of spaghetti. You throw that out to try and catch something that wouldn't go over your target as easily if it's a more stiffer texture.
I see. Now, what I'm reading is that they use them very effectively as weapons.
Yes.
How'd they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if you're horseback and you catch something or somebody with this thing, and you know what you would do is you pull up your slack and then you valley up to your horn here, you know, and then you would ride off, and so then you would have the rope would tighten up around your prey, and they wouldn't be able to get loose.
Okay.
And then so that way you could either drag them to death, or if you catch them around the neck, to strangle them. But there's a couple other ways that they use these pretty effectively too as a weapon in a military sense. And the one is that they would take two riders, and then the one rider would throw his riata out to the next rider. And then they would run along with the riata suspended between the two riders, and then anything that was in their path, they would knock them over.
That would do it. You know, in battles like San Pasqual in 1846, where the black powder and the American flintlocks got wet, they won with this thing. They actually won a battle, but they also had help. They had that other big stick over there. What's that?
Yeah, the lance, and you know, I'm not sure just how effective the lance was compared to the riata, but anyway, they did use lances, and then the cool factor was definitely a lot better with the lance than with the riata, probably. And so, you know, she would gallop along like the knights of old, and so yeah, they did use this at San Pasqual, and I think they had conditions that were conducive to being able to use a lance, because would have to have fairly open country to be able to use something like this.
Yeah, same with the riata, I imagine. In Natividad, they were aiming at their heads, so they must have been pretty good at this. They use these to kill cattle. What do they do? How did they get the knowledge on how to use lances like that?
Well, you know, first of all, they were horsemen. They were very famous for their skill as horsemen. So once they're on top of the horse, they're pretty much in control.
Right, that's true.
You know, so it probably didn't take too much practice to be able to get pretty good with the lance.
Well, they were good. Now, the other thing you've got there is I've got one. Can I pick this up? Under the mochila, the saddle here, I got a machete. And that's just a working tool, and they had that. But in addition to machete, what is that thing over there? That's a sword.
Yeah, these were
I'll take one.
what was called the espada ancha. There's some people that disagree with that terminology, but anyway, I'm not going to say whether that's correct terminology or not. But anyway, they were distinctive from the military type of sword. And then the term espada ancha means wide sword. And so the typical military sword of the time had a really narrow blade that wasn't sharp and was really long.
Right.
And so to be able to use that as a tool, it wasn't very effective. And you know, and so they went to using the espada ancha, which they could use as a machete to chop things and slice things. And the machete was a very very useful tool, particularly amongst the Hispanic people, and also they could carry it on the saddle really easily. And you just thread through the forks and hang underneath your mochila, and then you carry it along wherever you go without too much trouble.
And if they had pistols, they'd be on saddle holsters. They wouldn't be wearing them usually in the belt. They'd be in pommel holsters on the horse. But the famous thing in country western, like Marty Robbins songs, is the cuchillo. So have you got one of those around?
Yeah, the other edged weapon or edged tool, if you will, of the Hispanic people was a knife, and they would always carry a knife.
Just as a utilitarian tool, right?
Exactly, it's primarily a utilitarian tool, and they were notorious for returns, and so people were thinking this is a pretty gruesome, aggressive weapon. But first of all, they were a utilitarian tool, and the main thing was that working with livestock and working with riata, lots of times you can get tangled up in the riata, and so with your your knife, you could just pull it out real quick and have a chance of cutting yourself loose before you got too much damaged.
And that lets you hang it on your sash or on your boot.
Right. Yeah, and then the scabbards would have this thing here, and it's this little tab, and that actually had a purpose. It wasn't just for looking nice, but they didn't have belt loops because they didn't wear belts that much. It was mostly a sash, and so if you were the other way to carry your knife was in a sash, and so you stick it in your sash, and then this tab would keep the knife in place so it wouldn't slide out and lose it. And the same thing would work in the botas, and so.
So these are botas. These guys right here.
These are called the botas.
And they're these leather. So those are like basic baby chaps, right? They're not full chaps. They're leg protectors.
No.
Because you're wearing shoes, right?
Yeah, they would wear shoes and
not boots.
no.
Okay.
No, this is a bota, which is a name for a boot.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Oh, okay.
But they weren't actual boots in the sense that we would think of as a boot.
Mm-hmm.
And although I maintain that this is where a cowboy boot came from, and
Yeah.
so once the cultures came together,
And you sewed this onto this.
right,
Then you got cowboy
that's
boots.
a cowboy boot.
Okay.
And so
Makes sense.
So you had the merging of the cultures, and so you never saw like the early Civil War style boots or the boots that the Americans wore
Right.
with ornamentation on it. But the Hispanic people, they had that ornamentation of everything. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was kind of one of the big purposes of the bota, was not only for protection, but also you get the opportunity to have more space to display some flowers and whatever that's
Okay.
ornamentation.
I'm running over a little bit here, but what do you call these pants? Because that's another feature of California culture. The button up the side pants.
Yeah, the calzoneras and
Mm-hmm.
and when pants came into style, because at the end of the 1700s or early part of the 1800s, then the Hispanic learned that the long pants came into style too, so they didn't want to be left out of the fashion world, and so they came up with these things.
Mhm.
And if you have your botas and your knife here, and it's covered up with a pant, well, that's not going to do you too much good. So,
Right. Yeah.
so you had to split them up here in order to be able to get access to your paraphernalia.
Yeah.
And,
That's good.
So that was, gave a pretty distinctive look too. But
Yeah.
a lot of the vaqueros, they stayed on with the short pants
Ah.
or the breeches, because people always wore breeches until the long pants came into style.
Mhm.
George Washington, everybody else, they all wore
Right.
breeches. And
Sure.
so Hispanic people did too. And so a lot of the vaqueros, or the people who work in cattle, stayed on with the breeches longer,
Mm-hmm.
because
You got your leg protected by the botas anyway.
well, this is kind of a pain, and when you get on your horse, you throw your leg over the horse, and then you kind of leave the ends of your calzoneras behind. So then you got to grab the calzoneras and pull them over the top of your horse too.
Yeah.
And so in a practical sense, if you weren't too much ruled by fashion, well then you tended to stay on with the short breeches for a little while longer. And then that's probably my theory too, why in American ranches we still wear the short chaps, the chinks, what we call the chinks, or armitas.
Oh, yes.
And then,
Well, we started with pistols and we ended up with pants. Thank you very much.
it's a pleasure.